Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome. I can see five people joining in. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining in today. I know today is Friday evening, and I'm sure you all will have a lot of plans for the long weekend that's coming up. But I'm really glad some of you were able to make it. I can see few people joining in, and I'll start sharing my screen as well. Please let me know once you're able to see. All right, I believe all of you are able to see my screen. If you can just let me know in the comment section. And if you are able to see the screen, I'm sure you're able to see the universe is made of stories, not of atoms. So we are all about stories today. Do send a hi, a hello. Where are you joining from? Please let me know in the comments. I am Jyoti Singh and I'm joining from the pleasant city, Bangalore. So I would love to know who are the audiences today and where are you joining from? And while you do that, I'll quickly introduce myself as well. I'm sure all of you would have watched a lot of CID episodes, and a lot of you follow that. So, as part of my studies, I did the same thing what Dr. Salunke does in CID. And I remember right after finishing the college, I was giving one of my interviews in a state forensic science laboratory in Bihar. There were some questions I answered. There were a lot of questions that I did not answer as well. But I remember the last comment that the interviewer had for me, and he said, although you did not perform so very well in the interview, I do appreciate that you have a very good English. Why don't you become an English teacher? Obviously I didn't land up the job, but I did get an idea that I'm better in English, and I'm better in teaching. And right after that, in 2016 was when I started training English. From there I moved on to soft skills training. I trained in education management, and now I enable people, and I enable and drive organizations towards learning and growth. So that's me for all of you. Currently, I'm part of an organization called Great HR, which is for Great HR. So, with that note, we'll get started. And like I mentioned, we are all stories today. So, please feel free to interact with me in the comment section. I am seeing the comment section, and I can see few people joined in as well. Uh, so, we are all stories, right? And I would like to tell a story about a struggling writer. He was walking down a lane one day, and he saw a beggar sitting there with a sign, "I am blind, please help," and a hat in which there were few coins. And for that day, he thought that, let me ask this beggar how is he doing. And he asked the beggar, how are you doing, my friend? And he said, completely in a very sad tone, that I'm not at all doing well. Nobody is donating me anything. Do you have anything to donate to me? And the writer said, my friend, I'm sailing in the same boat. I'm a struggling writer. Nobody is buying my books. But what I can still do for you is I can write something for you. So what he did was he took that sign, he flipped the board, and he wrote something out there. He just kept it back near the hat and he just left for the day. The next day, he again came to the same beggar just to check how the beggar is doing now. And the moment he went to the beggar, he asked, my friend, how are you doing now? Did anything change? And the beggar, with so much excitement in his tone, he just said that, my friend, I was waiting for you. What did you write in that sign? People are just coming, giving me so much of money. I'm eating 3 times a day. I really want to know, what did you write? And the writer, he simply said that, nothing. I just wrote, instead of, I am blind, please help. He simply wrote, today is a beautiful day, but I cannot see. You see, with just simple change, this man completely changed the narrative. While you may not donate to this better just because he's blind, now you are able to do because it creates that empathy. And that is what the power of storytelling is. Great stories, they build relationships and make people care. And that is what happened in this case as well. Moving next, the art of storytelling. You just saw the power, how people quickly connect with you, whatever you want to get done. And this art is not something new. We have grown with stories. I'm sure all of you remember, the stories that your grandparents told you. Till today, the childhood stories that your parents tell you, just to compare how they were better than you. There are uh, and I don't know how many of you are Gen Z's and millennials here, but millennials like me will understand, what exactly this man with the red turban here means. He's Chacha Chaudhary, and his tales were so famous in our times. Even, if we would hear a lot of scoldings from our parents, we'll still go and buy these, and we were so interested in reading stories. Till today, we read a lot of books, a lot of comics. you know uh, Even, when you sit with your friends, and I'm sure here most of you will relate to me, there is nothing that bonds us together than a heartbreak. Today is a Friday evening as well. People just go, they meet, and one person, they start talking about their love stories. There are hundreds others who will start, and you will find them so relating. And when the time passes, nobody understands, right? And simply, movies, we live, we get inspired. We are waiting for movies to be released every Friday. I'm sure all of us here, let me know in the comments if there is anyone who doesn't like movies. And why do we like movies? Because of the narrative, because of the stories that we get out of the movies, right? And again, we are as a civilization emerged as a story, right? We never know whether there was exactly Adam or Eve. We've just heard them through stories, and we still believe them. Even in school days, if I ask you which is your favorite subject between history and maths, I'm sure a lot of you will tell me history. Because if I ask what is sine theta by cos theta, maybe we don't know. But if I ask what were the battles, that were between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, the mythological stories, everyone will remember them, even though we have not seen them. So that's the art of storytelling. People have always been, our human tendencies, our human brain is designed in a way we are more inclined to stories. And the art of storytelling, it has emerged as a very important form of communication these days, because it directly touches the human god. Now, what is storytelling? We've been talking about so much about storytelling, the art of storytelling. What exactly is this? So author Robert McKee, he says that storytelling is the most powerful way to put ideas into the world. And again, I still remember it was 2017. I was interviewing a candidate for a job. He was fresh out of college, and the as the interview started, the first question I asked him was, how are you doing today? So what will you answer if somebody asks you, what are you doing today? Let me know in the comments. And I can see few comments. Hi, good evening everyone. Thank you for joining. So, if anyone asks you, how are you doing today? The most you will say is you're feeling good. Especially if you're sitting in an interview, you might say, that I'm feeling excited, I'm feeling nervous, whatever. But I'll tell you what this person told me. And till today, I remember this person, and that's the power of it. What this person told me was that, ma'am, you know what, I was away from my home for last 5 years because I was doing my engineering. And the day I was leaving for home, I was standing at the railway station, I was waiting for my train. The same day my results were going to be out as well, and that was the time I had thousands of butterflies running in my stomach because I was excited to meet my parents, as well as I was excited and nervous for my results as well. And he said, I feel the same today. I feel so many butterflies tingling in my stomach. And that answer, everyone, I had never imagined somebody will tell me this answer for just a simple question like, how are you today? And the power, you see, I still now remember this guy. So that's how it's not about what you say to people, it's always about uh, how you make them feel. And it's about how you become interesting in whatever you're communicating. The greatest challenge that we feel is we communicate so many things on a daily basis, we talk to so many people, we go and give presentations, we introduce ourselves to multiple people, but how do we make sure that we are leaving an impact? How do we make sure that these people, they remember even after you've left them? And that is the tool that storytelling gives you. And now, why storytelling works as well. You remember all the stories that you've heard till now, and there's hardly any chance there's story that you don't remember. If I ask you about which was the latest movie you watched, you will tell me the exact dialogues of the hero as well. You will tell me how exactly the climax ended up, right? So the beauty about stories is that they are able to relate to you. When people feel related, when they feel that this is something that I have lived as well, that is where your communication becomes so effective. People will get the right message that you want to deliver. Stories, there are no better ways to inspire than stories. Till now, your parents, even if you are already working, your managers, they'll use a lot of stories of how people have worked in various challenges, they've emerged as leaders. And you'll see multiple brands, multiple leaders in the world who have struggled through these, and we still now take inspiration from them, right? And the beauty about these stories is that they stick. Do you forget the story about the hare and the tortoise? I think everyone remembers, slow and steady wins the race. We don't forget the cow who was thirsty, right? So stories have this unique quality that people will forget whatever you told them. They'll forget the last PPT they watched. They'll forget whatever the facts and figures you gave. But if you tell them stories, it will be with them forever. They have the ability to stick to the memory. And nevertheless, these stories, they become viral. You tell me a good story, I'll go and tell that story to 1,000 more. And that will keep on going on. That's what happens, from our ancestors till today. We've been just passing on these stories. So that's how storytelling works. So why not utilize this? Why not use this as a tool, where we are uniting ideas into stories that relate to people, and we are able to get the messages right. And trust me, you can do this everywhere. And a very famous quote that says, living and breathing an authentic story is the best way to survive in a conversation rich world. Right now, how do I utilize storytelling for me? These days, people talk a lot about brand, and people, individuals have brand too. You are a brand in yourself, you have your own story. And when there are opportunities where maybe you're meeting somebody for only the first time, you never get the second time, or even when you want to be remembered by people, how do we change our narratives? How do we communicate in a way that people find us interesting, they want to talk to us more, and they're always, they should be coming and listening to you rather than you going and talking to them, right? How do we change that? How do we flip that? The same way, I could have easily told you that I am working as a learning and development professional, but I told you my story, and I'm sure those of you who heard that story will know, how I emerged from a forensic background to a trainer today, or into the learning and development industry. Right? It's very simple to, just say that I am Jyoti and I'm a learning and development professional. But if you just involve your story, what is the purpose that you're serving, how, whichever way you are here today, what led you there, it completely changes the narrative, and people remember that, people are, able to relate to it, and it will stay with them forever. So, for you as a personal brand, utilizing the power of story is the best. People want to know the authentic you. They want to hear your stories. As humans, we have this general tendency that we are very much interested in personal lives of others. So, why not give them a good story? With that, there are others, areas also where you use storytelling. It's not just for a person, but it's for a complete brand, and businesses these days. If you see marketing industry, how brands are evolving. And how many of you are able to relate to this picture that you see on the screen now? Let me hear something in the comments. Those who have joined me, let me know, do you remember this commercial by a very famous brand? I'm still waiting for the comments to be in. Do you remember this picture commercial? This is by a leading brand. Okay, let me give you a hint. So it relates to a brand with a tagline "Dimag ki batti jala de." Now let me know, what is this brand? Okay, so Hardik says yes, he has seen this commercial. Any guesses what this brand is? Okay, let me revive your memories then, if in case you're not able to type in the chat window. So this is a very famous commercial by Mentos, which completely changed the area of marketing when they came up with this very interesting story, where it shows the evolution of man, how the man eats the Mentos, and he is evolved while the donkey is still in the same role that he's been doing, right? So uh, and with this brand advertisement, the business for Mentos, it just grew like anything. And there are many commercials like this. If you see these days, advertisements are all about stories, how they connect with their customers. If you see the dairy milk ad which says, कि कुछ मीठा हो जाए, all you see is they, playing with this creative notion where they show a story and they connect with you as customers. And it not just engages customers, but it also leads a long term relationship and trust, and bonding with that brand. And we have so many examples like this, whether it is the Jagore ad by Tata Tea, and I'm sure all of you would have seen eat 5 star and do nothing. Again, there is a person who is asked to do something by someone, he doesn't do anything, and just because he doesn't do that thing, the person is saved. So these are how these days brands or companies and organization are sharing their stories, sharing in the form of story what they are doing for their customers, and that is where it is leading to growth in business, more connection with the customers. So storytelling is used widely for your business as well. Even if you are a budding entrepreneur and you want to make a very good pitch in front of your investors, rather than just showing them a presentation, if you tell them a story where you are coming from and what is the purpose that you are trying to solve with your brand or with your startup, I think that will leave more impact. Okay, so with that being said, it's not just limited to you as a person, your personal branding, not for the brand marketing of your brand, but uh, even if in personal lives, in normal work life, you're just trying to make a point. How many of you are on the same page when we say you were somebody in school who used to remember, like we had to remember all the planets in the solar system, and it was just on our fingertips that it is Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, right? We took so much time to remember these planets. And this is a very interesting video that I saw on Instagram, and I was so touched by it. I liked it so much, I thought I'll share with all of you as well. So in 2006, Pluto was declared as a dwarf planet, which also means that it is not a planet now. Scientists don't consider Pluto as a planet. So there is a man, okay, and he's sitting with a man in his 20s, feeling very depressed and sad about something. And he goes and tells the same story to this person, that 2016 scientists declared that Pluto is not a planet anymore. So I said, so he asked the same question, and he said, so Pluto doesn't care about it. Pluto is still revolving around the sun with the same speed that it used to be billions of years ago. It doesn't care. And the man, he says, be like Pluto. Why do you need to care about what people think about you? So this is the beauty of stories. You just get the point right. With stories, you don't even need to tell people what you want to tell. They get the message themselves. So yes, message for today will also be like Pluto. Don't care what the world thinks about you. Be with your own story. Again, stories are not just limited to this. They have a wide application everywhere. Even if you are somebody working, you are leading certain teams, it can work wonders for learning as well. And there is a very famous leadership story, and my personal favorite always. So 1971, Bob McDonnell, he was the first year cadet in US military academy. And the first thing that these people in military academy were taught was, anytime any question is asked to you by your senior, you only have four answers to give. Either you say yes sir, or you say no sir, you can say I understand sir, or the fourth one, no excuse sir. Okay. So Bob McDonnell, he tells this story, and he tells that once I was going for the march formation, and I had completely ironed my clothes, my shoes were polished, and suddenly one of my friend, he jumped over a mud puddle, and it splashed all the mud on my shoes and my pants, and I was just standing on that march. I was helpless. And at the same time, the senior came in and asked me, hey Bob, what is this? Why are you standing in the march with so much mud on your clothes and your shoes? So now Bob had only four options. Either he could say yes sir. Okay, he was thinking in his head, yes sir, which was quite obvious, so he thought it will be very stupid to tell that answer. The second, he was evaluating for no sir, and he thought no sir, will again be something like lying, because I can see the mud is already there. The third response, he thought maybe I can say I understand sir, but that again was very obvious, so he did not want to seem more stupid. He was already doing the job there, standing with the mud all over. So the only good response he thought was no excuse sir, and he said the same. He said no excuse sir. Now, what this statement does is he completely took the ownership of the problem, whether it was in his control, it was not in his control. He just said, no excuse, sir. And he was saved of the reprimand that he was about to get from the senior. Now, 13 years later, Bob was reminded of the same story when he and his wife, they were trying to school their 6 years old kid Jenny, who was not cleaning her room on time, and they wanted that today we should go and we should confront her that she should do something about her habits. So both the husband and wife, they went to her room, and the moment they went to the room, they saw Jenny and they said, hey Jenny, we need to talk to you about your cleaning habits of your room. And before they could even utter any other word, what Jenny told was, no excuse sir, it won't happen again. Obviously, she was listening to the military academy stories by Bob. And with this just 7 words, Jenny not just took the responsibility, she was saved of all the shoutings of the reprimands that she was about to get. And Bob and his wife, they were completely dumbstruck. They didn't know what to do. So they just kissed the daughter and they went away. The problem was solved there and then. Now, decades later, Bob used the same lesson in the world's largest consumer product industry, which grew to 127,000 employees under his leadership. The only thing he taught with this story was, there might be a lot of things that we are doing. Some things go right, some things go wrong. But if we are able to learn to say no excuse, immediately you take that ownership of that job, whether it was in your control or not, you take the ownership, and you also make sure that you, as an individual, are working towards it. And this was the motto that Procter and Gamble, which Bob McDonnell was the ex-president and CEO, made as the culture. Every leader, every employee, whatever happens, there was only one answer: no excuse, sir. So that's how stories can be used to grow, to learn, to make your point to people, where they might find it difficult to see. So stories can be used for learning as well, for leading people, for learning. There are wide applications of storytelling. Now, while I'll tell all this to you, this is also, so how to tell a story. Sure, a lot of you who have joined me today are waiting to see, how do we become storytellers? Because the first thing that comes in our mind always is, I'm not a good storyteller. There are people who still say that they are good storytellers, just because they think, if you go and ask their audience, they might not say the same. But we'll touch very basic elements how to tell a story. Okay, now the first step towards is always, you have to choose the right story to tell. We've been talking, it can be for your personal brand, it can be for the business brand, it can be, when you are presenting something in front of your audience, you want to make some people understand something difficult that they are not able to understand. So you must first find out what is the objective, why I need a story, whether I want to show a success. Okay, whether I'm showing a failure from people can learn. I'm sure, the greatest failure story that all of us have learned from is the Nokia. The failure of Nokia has been a learning for so many brands to be agile, to be flexible enough to change in the dynamic marketplace. right? It can be that you're also trying to present a moment of clarity where, some story you tell, and it is completely clear to your audience what exactly do you want to communicate, right? So the first step towards storytelling is first to see what is my objective, what is my audience, why do I want to tell the story. Okay. And then is when you will craft the story. Right now, crafting the story again, how do we do it? There are times, when we hear some story and we just directly go and tell it to someone else. You know, this is very simple. But if in case, you want to leave people with that authentic story of yours, it's very important that you craft certain stories yourself. So, how do we do it? Okay. Now, I'm sure you watch and read a lot of stories, and if I see a lot of people, we have Indian audience here. I'm sure you watch Hindi movies, Hindi, Punjabi, or maybe Tollywood movies as well. There's always one hero in the story. And people like that hero. We also call the hero the protagonist. Okay. Now, at the same time, we also have a villain. Okay, some people, they like villain more than the hero. Right? So every story, the basic element that you will see is there is a hero, and then there is a anti-hero, which you call the villain. And whatever happens between the hero and the anti-hero, is your story. There is a struggle, there is a challenge, there is a fight. That is what adds masala to the story. Okay. Now, if we use those same element to tell stories today, for anything, how can we use those elements? So your hero, it can be a relatable character. It can be you as well. Like, there is a Gen Z term these days, uh, which says the main character vibes. You have to be the main character of your story, right? So the hero can be the relatable character. It can be a context as well. It can be a situation that that you are trying to tell to your audience. Okay. uh, who can be the hero now when I'm creating my story? The hero can be, the struggles that we face, maybe the ups and downs that we have in our life. You failed in something, and that is what you see as a hero. So what did you do to overcome that? That's your honest struggle. Okay, that will bring the engagement in your story, and that will also give you a lot of opportunity to connect with your audience. Okay, so all we need is a relatable character or a relatable situation. Okay. Something that this character was in, any challenge, any situation, or based on your objective. Let's say you're trying to tell a story about how you overcome your fears. Maybe a fear can be the anti-hero in your story. And what did you do to overcome that fear? That will be your honest struggle, and that's the entire plot that you fill in your story. But that's not all. With this, you also need to tell people what is it in it for them. If I'm listening to your story, why should I listen to your story? Right? There must be something for me, maybe a worthy lesson. Right? So when we tell stories in our real life, it becomes very important. You leave something for the audience. Are you leaving with them with some lesson, or are you leaving them with some thought, that they can go and they can do whatever they were doing better than the last time. So that's how you craft your stories. And it is difficult to craft stories, especially if you are not good at, if today you rate yourself as a not so good storyteller, it will take time. But the more you tell stories, the more you enhance your skill as a storyteller. It's just about getting started. And it starts with your friends, it starts with the people around you. We all have that characteristic in us. We started become storytellers since our childhood. you know. Just remember the first time you were late to come home, you know, you had a very good story to tell to your parents why you were late. My cycle got punctured, this happened, that happened, right? So we all have that inborn natural talent of telling stories. It's just about harnessing that imagination and creativity in whatever we are doing today, especially to improve our communication, because we want to leave our audience compelled. We want to engage our audience, and that's where, you know, stories come into picture. Now, you have crafted the story, but do you think that is enough? You know, not all stories they connect as well. So let's say, you know, if today I tell you that there was a king uh, who died, and then there was a queen who died, like, you know, it says, it goes in Hindi that, you know, ek tha raja ek thi rani, dono mar gaye, khatam kahani. Is that really a story? I believe no, right? But if in case I tell you that, you know, the king died, and in the grief of his beloved, you know, husband, the queen also died. Now that's a story, you know, that creates that emotional connection. So while we tell our stories, and why stories are so popular, so you know, impactful as a tool of communication, is because they enhance certain emotions in us, you know, they connect to people, they touch that human chord. Especially in a generation of AI, it becomes very important, how do we have the emotional connect with our audience, and this audience can be anything. So how do we do that? Okay. uh, how? So there's a very famous TED speaker called David Phillips, and he told that, you know, why people will be interested in your stories is because of two things. Okay. And he calls this the angel's cocktail and the devil's cocktail. Okay. I hope all of you know what a cocktail is, a combination of different drinks, you know. So what is an angel cocktail? And this completely, you know, is based on the science of our brain. So there are a few hormones, you know, which all of us experience, and all our emotions are because of these hormones, right? Now, what is this angel's cocktail? Now, what David Phillips says is, you know, whenever you're telling a story, and you want a good response, good engagement from your audience, you know, where they are, you know, just being there, you know, forgetting everything around them, you have to evoke certain hormones in them, you know, you have to evoke emotions. So he talks about three hormones which plays as the angel's cocktail. The first is dopamine. Okay. Now what dopamine is, you know, it is the factor which leads to, you know, a hormone which gets stimulated when you see some surprise coming in. Okay. That's the same hormone you feel when you see a lot of suspense thrillers, and you don't know what is coming next, and you are constantly just waiting. You don't leave the screen because you want to see what happens next. So that's dopamine. So with your stories, whatever story you are telling, you know, how do you create that suspense? And if you're able to do that, I'm sure your stories are engaging. Now, the second hormone that comes in this angel's cocktail is oxytocin. Now, there are many times, you know, people share so touching stories about their life. You know, they tell something that they lost. There's a very famous movie called Hachiko, and if all the dog lovers here, I'm sure you have seen that movie. The movie was so moving, you know. At the end, there were hardly any friends I spoke to who did not have tears, you know. So oxytocin is an hormone which comes up, you know, when you share something that is so relatable. You know, it touches that chord of individuals, you know. It builds trust, it builds that, you know, that empathy with the character or the story that you present. So if you're able to do that, if you're able to touch that stimulate that oxytocin, you know, again, your stories are bound to be compelling. And then comes the third hormone, the third person in the angel's cocktail party, and that's your endorphin. So endorphin is called our happy hormone. Okay. uh, Whenever you feel something good, you are happy, endorphins are which are stimulated in your body. And that's what these stand up comedians these days use. They bring up so relatable content, and they make you laugh. And that's why, we love watching these. Even if it goes for 1 hour, you will be there to listen to them, right? So even if your stories you're able to make people laugh with some relatable content, that is where, you have brought that emotional connection. And whenever you have evoked emotions, you can be rest assured that people are with you. You have made an impact, and people don't forget how you make them feel. Right, so that's your angel's cocktail. Going next, let's talk about the devil's cocktail as well. Okay, so David Phillips, he said, while you have a lot of things to engage your audience, there are certain, hormones which, if in case you utilize more, there are chances you might lose some of your audiences. So what comes under this devil's cocktail is your adrenaline, okay, and cortisol, which are your hormones which are mostly stimulated when you feel that rush. There is a fear of something, or there is a stress, that mostly happens when you're seeing a very, you can say, movies like horror movies. When you see, there are few people who will leave half the way because their adrenaline is at the highest level now, so they just go and leave, right? So the devil's cocktail, you have to make sure that you're only using in certain amount. If it goes beyond that, you might lose your audience as well. But there are people who like to be rushed, who like to be, they feel the stress that the character is feeling in the story or in the movie, right? So you can use that as well, but in limited amount, so that you're not overdoing it. So these are, how you can create that emotional connection with your stories. Uh, and once you have this, you know what are the stories that you are going to tell, what is the purpose of that story. You know that, which are the emotional elements I want to evoke in my audiences, so that I'm able to connect with them. That's where, you are story ready. Now, you might be thinking that, all this looks okay. It looks, that, it is easy. You just find a story, bring some emotional element, make people laugh, and that is fine. We have a story and we are successful in whatever we are doing. But it's not that easy, because you see, again, there are thousands and thousands of stories everywhere. you know I am a story, you are a story, but how do we make our story, that people want to listen to us more than the other stories that are, revolving in this universe, right? So one thing, and one tip that you must also utilize is, whenever somebody comes and tells you stories, it is very important that you take a note. So let's say today you meet few people, and there is some story that you like, or let's say, you watch some, let's say, video on Instagram or Facebook, and you really like that story. Just note it down. All of us have smartphones these days, and you can make a note that, maybe that folder you can name interesting stories, and you make a record of these stories every day. Whichever story you like the best, you write it, okay, and keep it with you. You will be amazed that end of the year you'll have so many stories, and these are all the interesting stories that you like. So it's very important that you don't forget any. So you make a note, and wherever required, there are situations when you are faced, you can use that same story. You just have to see your notes. And the second tip, that I would also like to give here is, be observant. And this comes, from, my personal experience. I have a colleague, and this colleague, for every topic that you bring to him, he'll have a story. He tells so many great stories that every time we go to him, there is one story that will come out. So it's also very important that we become observant in our daily life. While you are traveling, while you are meeting new people, everyone is a story. You find that story, you find something interesting there, and that becomes a story. And that's what your stand up comedians also do. How do we find their content so relatable? Because they observe people. How can one thing be relatable to so many people, right? So it's just about observation. Each and every one of us go through the same things. It's just about how we observe that, make it relatable, and use it for our own good to tell stories, right? So that's about how you can utilize these two tips to also have a lot of stories to tell, and then you can go and craft stories. So with that, we are almost at the end of the session. uh, Now we've only talking about stories. We did discuss how to create stories, how to have more stories with you. uh, but storytelling, and one aspect of storytelling, it is also which maximum time people fail to understand, is it's not just about story, right? It is also about how you use certain analogies or certain metaphors to tell your point. It's all about making your content interesting. How you become interesting, how you weave that content in a way that is presentable and relatable to people. Now, uh, I was working with a company called Maersk, which is the largest shipping line. And when I was with that company and I was attending the induction, they were telling us about the largest, container that they had released, and that's called the Tripoli container. So these containers, the shipping containers, they're used for goods transfer, obviously in the sea. I'm sure all of you know about it. So they were talking about this Tripoli container, and they told the size of the container, how big it is, and they told some number, right? Which nobody remembers even till today. I don't remember. But what they did tell me was that the size of these containers is a few meters more than the Eiffel Tower lying down. So now I can relate how big are these containers, the shipping containers, right? So that's also one of the way how you present to people and use this storytelling. While I may forget the fact and figures, I will never forget, that these Tripoli containers, these are even bigger than the Eiffel Tower lying down. So again, this will also require observations. So storytelling is all about creating stories. It's all about compiling stories to tell. It's all about finding analogies. It's about finding metaphors to deliver your content in a way that people get the message without even you telling them that this is the message. And they don't just get the message, they relate to it. It sticks with them, and it travels from years to years. Can anyone answer when was the the PowerPoint invented, invented or discovered, whatever? But and if in case you attended a presentation yesterday, I'm sure you don't know what all was there in the presentation. But we all know, through our ancient paintings, through a lot of ancient stories, how the early man evolved and became the man of today. We never forget that. That was billions of years ago. And presentation you just saw yesterday, right? And even for today as well, not any of you will remember what was there in the PPT, what was written there. But I'm sure some of the stories that I told, will still be there with you. And that's the power and art of storytelling. It's just about, making your communication, so effective and so relatable, and at the same time interesting. So stories are all about interest, and that's why, we love stories. It completely touches, and plays with the magic and science of our brain. Okay, so that's about storytelling. And this is my last slide, though. Stories matter. As much as we know that stories matter, it is very important that we start believing that stories matter. There are thousands of stories with you. If I ask you, tell me a story, you'll have multiple stories and you will be confused which story to tell now. It's just about, taking that stand up and also saying, taking an onus where which story I would want to tell people, how do I want to be remembered as, how, what story I tell to people, that they understand me as an individual, or maybe your brand as an entity, for all the endeavors that you wish to do. These days storytelling is not just limited to, just telling stories. It has evolved in each and every day of our life. So stories do matter. Listen to stories, and more importantly, tell stories. um, uh, the more you tell stories, the more you evolve yourself as a storyteller. And the only last note that I will leave you with is, the story should always be authentic. While we learn so much about how to tell stories, and there are a lot of other ways also, there are a lot of frameworks in storytelling, how storytelling can be utilized. But I'll do say that, as natural and as authentic it can be. Because one thing that storytelling, how normal communication differs from a storytelling is, it connects. And I will only be able to connect with you if that story is authentic. Okay, so sometimes we need to be vulnerable, sometimes we need to tell even the stories which we have never told anyone, and you will see the beauty. People will love to come and listen to you. And I'm sure you have a lot of people in your life who you always go to because you love the stories they tell. You love the learnings that you have from them. Right. So with that note, we are at the end, everyone. I see a lot of people here. Uh, I will leave some time for questions as well. Are there any questions that I can answer? Please let me know in the comments, everyone. Any questions that we can take up? We still have 7 minutes to go. I wanted to make sure I talk to you. You let me know certain questions. And while I wait for the questions to come in, we will also roll out the feedback form with all of you. Please make sure you fill out the feedback form, and you will receive the certificate as well post the completion of the feedback. So make sure you fill in the feedback for us. All right. I'm still waiting for the questions. I see Hardik, Saurav. There is one person called Cruel Gaming. That's an interesting name. So that's a story again that you can see. I can see Himanshu, Arushi. Any questions, anyone? Okay, all right. So, if no questions, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to me today, listening to my stories. Giving me time in this Friday evening. Thank you so much. Keep telling stories. Keep evolving your stories. Let your stories go viral. Let people know you, the authentic you, and use the power of storytelling in whatever you do, whether it's your introduction, whether it's a business page, your brand. You want to tell anything to anyone, you're presenting in front of a big audience. Use stories to communicate the same. So, with that note, I give you 5 minutes for your self care, everyone. Thank you so much once again, and have a good evening. Have a very good weekend. Thank you.